Today, we're diving into a fascinating constitutional showdown. This is a story that pits Scotland's ambition to protect human rights directly against the foundational rules of the United Kingdom. It's all about power, law, and who really gets to have the final say. So here's the central mystery. Back in 2021, the Scottish Parliament passed these incredible new laws to bake international human rights directly into the law of the land. I mean, it sounds amazing, right? A huge step forward. But before the ink was even dry, the whole thing was put on hold and sent straight to the UK Supreme Court. So why? What was the problem? Let's unpack it. All right, first things first, let's look at what the Scottish Parliament was trying to do here. This entire story really kicks off with a promise to give human rights protections way more teeth for the people of Scotland. And that promise came to life in two really ambitious new bills. The first one was all about taking the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and making it directly enforceable in Scottish courts. The second bill did pretty much the same thing for the European Charter of Local Self-Government, which is a big deal for giving local councils more power. And get this, both bills were passed unanimously. That kind of cross-party support is pretty rare. So if pretty much everyone in Scotland was on board with these laws, what's the issue? Well, the problem was never about whether these laws were a good idea. It was all about whether the Scottish Parliament actually had the power to make them. And that, my friends, brings us to the devolved power puzzle. The key phrase you're going to hear a lot is legislative competence. Now, it sounds super technical, but it's really just a fancy way of asking, does this Parliament have the legal right to pass this law? See, the Scottish Parliament can't just do whatever it wants. Its powers were given to it by the UK Parliament through the Scotland Act of 1998, and that act comes with some pretty big strings attached. And this chart here lays it out really clearly. On the left, you've got all the stuff the Scottish Parliament handles. We're talking health, education, local government. But on the right are the powers that are reserved for the UK Parliament in Westminster. Things like defense, foreign policy, and look at that one at the top, the Constitution. That's the one that's about to become a major problem. And here it is. This is the constitutional red line. Tucked away in the Scotland Act is this critical rule that says the Scottish Parliament cannot, under any circumstances, pass a law that changes or even just affects the power of the UK Parliament to make laws for Scotland. This one rule is the entire reason we're talking about this today. So, because of that red line, these bills couldn't just sail through and become law. The UK government basically raised a legal flag saying, hang on a minute, we think the Scottish Parliament has stepped over the line here. And just like that, the whole issue was punted up to the highest court in the land. The question put to the Supreme Court was incredibly direct. It had nothing to do with whether children's rights are important. The question was a purely legal one. Do these new Scottish laws illegally reach out and try to tie the hands of the UK Parliament? And as you can see from this timeline, things moved really fast. The bills get passed in March 2021. Just 1 month later, they're referred to the Supreme Court. And by October of that same year, the judges were ready with their final decision. Okay, so this is the moment of truth. After all the legal arguments, what did the Supreme Court actually decide? The verdict was crystal clear, and every single judge agreed. The court found that, yes, parts of both of these bills did go beyond the powers of the Scottish Parliament. They had, in fact, crossed that constitutional red line. So you might be wondering, how did they get there? Well, the court's logic was actually pretty straightforward, kind of like a chain reaction. Step 1. The whole point of the Scottish bills was to make sure all laws were compatible with these rights treaties. Okay, simple enough. Step 2. The problem. That rule wouldn't just apply to Scottish laws, it would apply to all laws, even future ones passed by the UK Parliament for Scotland. Step 3. The effect. This basically puts a new legal hurdle in front of the UK Parliament. Their laws would now have to be read and interpreted through a Scottish legal filter. And that led to the final conclusion. Doing that modifies the power of the UK Parliament, which, as we know, is a no-go. And this quote from the judgment really hits the nail on the head. The court said the bill was trying to create a fundamental standard that would bind everyone, including the UK Parliament. So you see, the court's decision wasn't an attack on human rights at all. It was a defense of the UK Parliament's ultimate constitutional power. Now, this ruling wasn't just about these two bills. Oh no, it sent ripples right across the UK's constitutional landscape, and it has some huge implications for the whole idea of devolution going forward. So, what are the big takeaways from all this? Well, for starters, those bills can't become law until they're changed to fall in line with the court's ruling. More importantly, this case drew a really clear, hard line in the sand, showing exactly where the limits of Scottish power lie. It was a powerful reminder that at the end of the day, the UK Parliament is sovereign. And finally, this case is now the benchmark. Any ambitious new laws from Scotland will be measured against this ruling. When you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, this case is a perfect snapshot of the tension that's just built right into the UK's political structure. You've got this confident, powerful, devolved parliament in Scotland wanting to push its authority to the max, and it's running right up against the bedrock legal reality of a sovereign central government in Westminster. And that leaves us with this huge, thought-provoking question. This case was about Scotland, but the problem is universal. In any country that has this kind of multi-layered democracy, how do you strike that perfect balance? How do you let a region have its own legal freedom while still respecting the ultimate power of the central state? There's just no easy answer to that.